Hi, it's Rick Spence from NextStars with our founder, Saeed Zeinali. And we're here to talk a little bit about some of the more uh, less well known parts of the application process for the Canadian startup visa. We've got lots of entrepreneurs who want to come to Canada, want to bring their businesses or start new businesses in Canada. The startup visa is a route to get work visas and then hopefully permanent residence in Canada. So there's a big reward for getting it right, but it's a bit of a, would you call it a long and complicated procedure?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rick. Uh, Startup Visa is a great program. First of all, obviously, I think we can all agree that there are some minor problems with the program. There can be improvements, in the way that the files are being processed and assessed and
That's a
addressed.
whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. Yes, the process is lengthy, time consuming, requires patience, but also the reward is big if you get it right. It's the only program, the federal program, that has a direct PR on the business, business immigration strategy, and also it has a work permit option as well for the founders that want to come to Canada and want to kind of lay some of the groundwork while they're receiving a PR decision. So it's in essence a very good program, but as you mentioned, it's a lengthy program and it's often complicated.
Right. And one of the big hurdles in the way, an important step, is when you an applicant is still in their own country. They're working on the business that they want to bring to Canada, or they're supposed to be working on the business, and then they get a letter from they hear from their officer at IIRC. That's it, and they want a progress report. And this is not. You gave me a window into this process, and this is not like a 5-minute book report where you can read the outside back cover of the book and then talk about it. This is a fundamental business and professional checkup, and I was amazed at the thoroughness of it, at how much they want to know, and I'm just wondering, what can applicants do in order to make sure that they're not that they're not surprised when they get this? How can they be preparing themselves, and what do they have to prepare themselves for?
Oh, absolutely, you're right. And this, what we have seen, the update requests from IRCC officers have become more comprehensive and more thorough over time. Um, well, the definition of a qualifying business under startup visa business class is well outlined in a startup visa manual. Also, the definition of a startup visa applicant is well outlined in a startup visa manual. The founders need to demonstrate that their business is innovative and is high potential and is going to contribute to the Canadian economy by creating jobs or developing an IP or solving a real Canadian problem that can also be exported or grow to other markets. So, what the IRCC officer is hoping for is to see a genuine business, uh, dedicated team of founders, qualified, well equipped to deliver on the mission and vision of the company. And they want to also see a traction. This is very important. No one is interested to see a dot of a person or a company or a frame. They want to see dot, 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 dot. They want to see a trend. They want to see a story that the founder and the team and the startup is of value to the Canadian startup ecosystem.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit? Let's just go into traction a little bit more. There's a lot of ways to show traction. Tell us what traction is, and can you give us a couple examples of what um, the officer might accept as, yeah, they've been doing good work. This is legitimate progress.
Well, the amount of work that founders can do from a distance is limited. Obviously, the candidates that are the applicants that are in Canada on a work permit do receive these PR checkups, like the business checkups or the progress report requests. And I think the amount of work that they can do is different, and the expectation is also different as well. But if you're sitting in your home country and waiting for a PR decision, obviously you can't just like submit your application with a letter of support and just say bye bye, I'm going to go do whatever I'm doing, and then once you give me a PR, I'm going to come in and then like see what I can do for the business. If
Right. So
you're
the human instinct is to procrastinate and put it off.
Oh, you
But you
can't.
can't do that
No,
in
no, no,
this.
because like they often these update requests have 7 days or 30 days to respond, and n- one cannot prepare for the amount of questions, and you can't really show traction. So let me give you some examples of traction. The way I look at it, a startup has product, has business development or uh, activities that lead to revenue, basically, and activities that relate to operation of the business. So basically, product, revenue, operations. And like in each bucket, there's work that can be done, and most importantly, documented, that can paint a very vivid picture to the officer, that officer can extrapolate. Think, okay, if I follow this trajectory, and if I let these guys into the country, then I like what I see. I like the future of this business. I like the future of these founders, and I think we can get in deep into each section. And we've done also videos that basically help founders with very like detailed kind of guide on how to create and generate and maintain these documents. But yes, longest story short, you want to be prepared ahead of time. If you're a genuine startup, that's a lucky day for you, because it's not going to be hard for you. But if you're not really committed to your startup, it's going to be very hard to generate enough traction. So to put in front of the officer, for the officer to look at and be like, hmm,
So it's
I
too
like this.
late to wait till the letter comes. So you've got to be
Absolutely.
working on this long before.
And Rick, this is one of the biggest misconceptions of many startup founders and their legal representatives, that a letter of support is the end all be all in a startup visa. No, I'm sorry to break it to you. A letter of support is not the beginning, but it's almost the beginning of your work. So, letter of support is a piece of paper that a designated entity gives to you that shows that at that point of time, the designated entity found the business interesting, innovative, and good.
And so that's where the work really begins.
Exactly.
Sorry about that.
Exactly. And unfortunately, like it's this is a lengthy process now on the website. It's 40 months for processing of a startup visa. 40 months. So that's in itself another podcast. But you need to show 40 months of traction, when the officer is asking for a progress report. Well, you can say, oh, I was like doing this and that, I was like doing some market research and blah blah blah, but there's some activities that if you don't do, like it's going to be very hard to convince the officer that you're a genuine startup with genuine interest in Canada, making an impact in Canada.
So am I supposed to be working on the product and the market and the team and the organization itself? Am I supposed to be working on all those things?
Oh, absolutely. If you're waiting in your home country, obviously, like it's going to be hard to attend local trade shows, for example. But still, you can have a very upbeat and lively LinkedIn page. You can reach out. You can develop your own network on LinkedIn. You can reach out to people and book, Zoom calls with them, or everybody is open. And this is something that I tell to like founders: don't be shy. Like in Canada, everybody's nice, everybody's helpful. So you reach out and
We're
ask.
shy too.
Yes, but like you shouldn't be, right? You should go out and talk to people. Everybody likes to help, you know. And if you're a startup founder, I don't know, from Iran, from Vietnam, China, Turkey, you can reach out, even if you're waiting in your home country, and be like, hey, I'm trying to bring this idea to Canada, and can you help me? And more often than not, people will be like, yeah, like, I book some time with me. I'm happy to talk with you for half an hour. Have that call, take a screenshot, write down what you learned from that call. Maybe that like the person you talk to can be your advisor, can be your first partner in Canada, can be your strategic hire down the road. So things like that would be really good. Also, on the business development front, there are many associations that, for the industry that these companies are in. Like, if you're in agriculture, there's the Agriculture Association of Ontario, federal. Then if you're in like tech, like there's many different associations, like industry associations. You don't have to be in Canada in order to be a part of those
And very
associations.
often they have events that are online
Absolutely,
that anyone can attend. And sometimes they have videos of previous events. There's a ton of stuff
for
that
sure.
people can do.
And then like you can by becoming a member of these associations, you get to talk to people like your peers, your industry peers. They can share some tips about how to do business development, how to, like, you can create a customer list, you can create a SWOT analysis, like go deep in assessing your competitors. And this is a document that needs to be versioned, like as
So
you.
you show progress. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you learn more about the competitors. And I always suggest to my clients, when you create these documents, email it to your designated entity, or email it to your mentor, or to yourself, so you can timestamp these progress as well. So, like, cause like,
But
remember,
better still, get the timestamp and get feedback
for
from the
sure.
mentor or the entity. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's how you create versions on this, right? So, like, and that shows, like, that you're genuinely want to make progress. Just this is an example on the business development side, which I think is often the most limited when it comes to making traction, because from a distance it's going to be hard to make a sale.
We
But
should probably do a video on that alone.
oh, for sure.
Business development from remote. Okay, we're going to
Yes,
write that.
from
Remind us if we forget.
yeah, and if there's anything else you want us to talk about, do reach out. Absolutely, we love to talk about the topics that you find interesting.
Can you give us, just to close this off with a real life example, is there a client of yours that you remember that did anything particularly creative or effective in terms of preparing their business, growing their business, uh, creating their business remotely?
For sure. I had a medtech client, and
Sorry,
uh,
medical technology.
medical technology
Yep.
client. And for a medical technology client, business development is very different than retail, because there's regulatory. They have to first and foremost understand the classification of their device, and what it takes. What's the regulatory pathways? Their 510(k), which is a technical term I'm not going to get much into, but uh, but what we did together was, I suggested them to kind of talk to some key opinion leaders, in their field, some physicians, to figure out if this device is cleared, if this device is in market, would this fit in with your current, like the way, like your current processes? Would this fit in with the way you're currently, would you really find this useful? If we, because in medtech, it has to be cleared, it has to be paid for by insurance company, or the government. It has to be somehow, be approved for insurance reimbursement. But that was, to me, very powerful, because Like when and physicians and technical people talk to each other from different countries, then they can figure out, although the processes are the same, the diseases are the same, but the approach to carrying and curing the disease and diagnosing is different because the payments and payer model is different. But if I was officer and the officer granted a favorable decision in this particular case, I look at this and be like, okay, they know at least what they're facing. They have already made connections in the target market. They know what the immense complexity of what they're facing. And even if their startup is not successful, I'm I become confident that they would be a very if their first venture is not successful, they're definitely at some point of their life they're gonna come up with something that would save lives and would create jobs and would be of value to Canadian startup ecosystem. So that to me is a very vivid example of someone that did something innovative that I found impressive myself.
Right. And let's say that I was an applicant and I had lots of other things to finish up in my home country and family and dentist appointments, and I didn't do a great job. And I get the letter and I do as much as I can to answer all these questions. And let's say I get a negative response.
Yes.
What are my options after that?
So, with a big caveat that like we're not lawyers, we're not immigration professionals. We just see this from a business perspective. Often, lawyers and immigration consultants also come to us to consult with on these questions. Well,
But is that my only chance? Am I now out of luck entirely?
not entirely. So if the officer does not like the business, right? Before there used to be a process called peer review, and they would send the business to and like it was an opaque process, but supposedly NACO, the National Angel Organization or Capital, I don't know what it stands for, but would assign the case to another designated entity to review the processes of the first designated entity that issued the letter of support. That process is gone. I think it's a good thing that's gone. But now the officer either doesn't like the business or the officer doesn't like the candidate and the relation of the candidate to the business.
But my example suggested that they may or not like the business, but they don't think you've made enough progress.
Okay. Oh, that's the third thing. That basically they say, okay, you're not genuine. You haven't shown, you haven't.
We're
convinced.
genuine. We're just busy.
Well, like no, like say this. The thing is, though, the startup visa, the intention of the applicant shouldn't be to immigrate to Canada. The intention should be to have a successful, thriving startup. Coming to Canada is the byproduct of the process. It's cherry on top. You know, it. You can't aim for. Oh, you can't just say to the officer. And this is something that often our immigration consultants sometimes get it wrong. When they are asked questions, they think of it from an immigration lens and they answer questions. For example, I give you an example. There is on commitment certificate, there's a section that in which you have to explain why there's an urgency for candidates to come to Canada. And I see a lot of times like people put like personal family reasons. Oh, I have a kid that wants to go to school in Canada, and that's why I urgently need to come to Canada. It has to be a business urgency. It has to be a reason why you're gonna like not coming to Canada is gonna like hurt the business or hurt your chances of creating a massive successful business. But that's just an example, and that shows how people like sometimes misread the situation. At the end of the day, if an applicant does not show enough traction, sometimes they issue a PFL, like a procedural fairness, basically telling to a PFL, procedural fairness letter.
Fairness.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So basically telling to the applicant that, look, I'm not really convinced with your case.
So do I get a second chance?
Yeah, just like if you have anything else, tell me. Otherwise, I'm gonna refuse you.
That's when the real work begins. No, don't do that.
Well, so unfortunately, sometimes I've seen that too. Like, and they come to us and be like, "Oh, like, I have an emergency," and like, there's
By
only,
Wednesday?
but there's only so much you can do, right? And like, when the PA, like, ideally, you want to do a stuff beforehand, so like you never receive a PFL. But we've done cases like when and I we work with lawyers, with experienced lawyers that they've done a startup visa, and we strategize together. At that point, Rick, we are hoping to fight, to have something, to give the lawyer something to fight back in a court. So we almost think that, okay, the file is going to get refused, so let's strategically put some, traction in the mix, like show some evidence that would help the lawyer to have a successful, overthrow of the initial decision of the
Right.
officer.
It sounds like the thing to do is put the work in first
Oh,
and
big
not
time.
depend on a final appeal that could go anyway.
Absolutely. And like there is a lot of court cases out there that I recommend. It's on Canly. Like, all the founders should read some of the previous decisions of the decisions, the outcomes of the rulings, basically. And those rulings becomes, like they're basically like the future cases are going to be ruled the same way. So that's how serious this is, and it's the chances are very dim if a founder received their letter of support and said in their home country, like doing whatever, and then like thinking that, oh, like PR is going to be granted to them on a silver platter. I hate to break it to you, but that's not the case. Yes, it's a very active program.
Right. So this is, a part of the program that doesn't get discussed much. So we're happy to bring this information to you. If you have any other questions, give us a call, send us an email at NextStars, and we'll do our best to explain it to you.
For sure. And if you disagree with anything that we shared today, or you have something to add, we love to hear from you. Look, this is something that we've been doing for quite some time, and what we say is like backed with experience of supporting hundreds of founders going through this process over the course of like past 7-8 years. So we're very confident in what we say, but at the same time, we would love to hear from you, your take, your opinions, and if there's a topic you want us to talk about, for sure, like shoot us an email or leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe us on YouTube and give us a like. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us a lot.
Makes us feel better.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you,
you.
Saeed, and
Thank you.
thank you for watching.
Thank you.